my series on similarly named metal bands. This one's actually inspired by a comment in the first in this series, the one I did on the 2 disgorges. Well, as you'll see in the video, there's more than that in the disgorge family, but there's only 2 of any real concern. But today we're going to be comparing the Bewitched. Now, I do know there was the Irish girl group. I was vaguely familiar with them. I had a friend with a younger sister, and I noticed one of her posters or something to that effect, because I was already a fan of the Swedish Bewitched by that point, and so it had caught my eye or whatever. But what had else caught my eye, reading catalogs and mail order websites and stuff, by this point in the late 90s, there were a number of companies which had established a web presence, so to speak. For certain, Osmos did. Yes. And really, so they were promoting good advertising, because I found a number of bands on the Osmos catalog that I enjoy to this day, that I found early in my black metal exploration, so to speak. Bewitched was one that caught my eye, namely because I was using cover albums as a way to explore bands that I wasn't familiar with yet, especially trying to get into that first wave black metal. I'd only heard Venom and Bathory by this point, and Hellhammer. But there were a number of other bands that I was not familiar with whatsoever, but those bands were featured on this cover album I had purchased early on, Encyclopedia of Evil. I lived overseas at this time I lived in Guam at this time, I believe, when I first purchased this, so I was really jamming out to the black thrash sound. It was about this time that black thrash seemed to kind of split off from the whole second wave black metal movement and kind of create its own subgenre. We had Absu and, of course, Destroyer 666 and some of those other ones in Australia, Gospel of the Horns, and I think Atomizer was just coming up at this point. I'm not just focusing on Australia here, but for whatever reason, they to me were the leaders in the black thrash sound. Check out my Australia black metal video. Anywho, this was where it was at for me, because I really, as I was progressing into extreme metal, I really came from the thrash metal sound more than anything else. So in order to delve further into black metal, thrash combo was a good way for me to, for these ears to pick up on stuff I liked. And I really liked Bewitched right out the gates. Now, while I'm not going to recommend that cover EP I mentioned, Encyclopedia Evil, I'm going to mention Diabolical Desecration. Tongue twister, I guess. Anywho, it was well known in the promotional material. They were sort of a super group. The main guy from Ancient Wisdom, which admittidly, of all the ancient bands I was listening to at the time, they were my least favorite. But have they put anything out lately? I'll have to check on that. And then Blackheim from Catatonia, and I guess he was later in Bloodbath, which is a decent one to check out if you're into death metal. But anywho, so the combination of the black thrash that Osmos was really promoting at the time, Sadistic Execution, I think that's another one on their label that they were promoting, and then covering the first wave black metal that I was really trying to learn more about at that point, and then having established musicians from bands I was already familiar with and fans of, led me to find this Diabolical Desecration, and it's fantastic. It just, right out the gates, it's so damn catchy. The vocals are on par. And little known fact, they wrote this song about me. Check it out. The side of hell we bear. Yeah, the black was weird. With the legions of the dark, that's the same that's mine. think of that. Raw, catchy, those tongue-in-cheek lyrics that are over the top. I'm so evil. That it's that hilarity that I think is necessary in the entire black metal formula that they really figured out here. I would also recommend you check out the live album that came out, I think, a couple years later, live in Essen. They really captures the sound very well. And they're very much still an active band, but I guess 30 years on, they've had lineup changes as bands typically do by this point. But if you're really going to start anywhere with this band, start with Diabolical Desecration. All right, and now we have, I'd say it's the lesser known, although they are the older of the two Bewitched. This one was formed way back in 1990, which kind of makes me wonder. Osmos was an international label. The internet existed by then. It's kind of strange to me that they would allow another band to be named when there's already one in the same genre that's somewhat established by this point. I don't know. I guess I can forgive it. Until about the year 2000, I can forgive bands for using another established band's name. But anymore, that's just kind of ridiculous when a band does. There's a demoniac thrash metal band from Chile, which they're pretty damn good. But to me, the New Zealand demoniac is S tier stuff, and I know people don't really like them, but they're known, right? But I guess there was that demoniac from, was it Serbia? It was one of those southeast Slavic nations, I think. Kind of a heavy speed metal from the early 90s, I want to say that. And then there was the demoniac that was a demo band in Germany, and should I do a demoniac? I should do a demoniac. Anywho, let's get back to Bewitched. What the hell? So, as I had mentioned, this Bewitched is a South American black metal band from Chile. Now, usually when I think of South American black metal, I think of more of that kind of war metal, kind of poor production. I don't know, maybe Holocausto, Sarcophago, Atomica, Volcano, like that kind of sound. A little early Sepultura, that kind of sound more than anything else has defined South American black metal. But if you watch my South American black metal video, you'll know that's a trope that doesn't always hold true. And in this case, for Bewitched, it absolutely doesn't hold true either. This is a very different sound. This album is called Dragonflight. It's from 1998, and I noticed it was recently repressed by Iron Bonehead, which for me is a huge selling point. If I hadn't heard it yet, that would have totally motivated me. For the mere fact that I find Iron Bonehead's ratio of good to bad is probably the highest for any record label I've ever been familiar with in all my years. Like, the shit tier stuff compared to their S tier stuff, it's way out of whack. They do very good stuff. You could almost just blindly purchase anything from them. Now, there are definitely other good record labels, and I mean, in the past, I would definitely say Necropolis was the best. I mean, just anything they had. I would say maybe 3 releases on their entire roster were shit. Nowadays, of course, Hell's Headbangers, a lot of damn good stuff. Nuclear War Now, that's usually a good battle. Anywho, back on track here. Always getting distracted. Focus! So this album starts off in the most majestical of manners, at least for me. Maybe it's overplayed. How many times have you heard Carmina Burana in your life? But it still invigorates my soul every time I hear it. Especially there are some certain renditions that I don't know what it does. You know, those hairs that stand up back. I love that song. And then as the metal starts and it progresses, you're going to notice that there are 2 competing vocalists, 2 different styles of vocals in here. You know what? Best thing you can do is just listen. Check it out.
I started out still on the seat. Winter comes with my soul. I started out still on the seat. Winter comes with my soul. My mother's ready for me. The winter star becomes your eyes.
So what'd you think? They got as many riffs as their Swedish counterparts, don't you think? And then that solo, that keeps going. It just keeps going. And you'll find them all through the album. They're kind of flowery at times. I would say it might fit in more of maybe a symphonic black metal type band, but even just like a power metal type band. A lot of those solos would fit in there. So it doesn't always mesh well, but it's extremely competent and enjoyable. It's beyond competence. It's inspired. It's good stuff. Just maybe it might not mesh as well. It might be a little weird on your ears at first, but it is fantastic stuff. It just keeps going on like that. I highly recommend you check out both Bewitched if you haven't by now. But for me, I got to pick a winner here, right? Why am I doing this? I hope you put your selection in the comments. Maybe you hadn't heard either one before. Maybe you'd only heard one before. What are your thoughts? Anything? I'm curious what your thoughts are before I'm going to go and say the Chilean Bewitched. I kind of have to be in a certain mood to listen to it, but for a raw, thrashy type black metal, I'm almost always up for that. Morning, noon, or night. Mood doesn't matter. So I definitely am going with the Swedish one. At least their early stuff. I gotta tell you, I'm not as familiar. I'm definitely not nearly as familiar with their more recent stuff. And when I say recent, in my head, that's the last 20 years. Time goes faster when you start getting older. It's weird. There's a couple different thoughts as to why that happens, and I would say it's like the portion of your life you've lived and like the number of new Anywho, what band should I do next? I know it was just a joke comment in the previous one, but I would like maybe some real comments, and shares and likes and subscribes and all that stuff would be wonderful. But yeah, more or less, I just want a suggestion for what band to do next. I got about 10 up in my head that I could probably put together real quick, but it's not just for me. I know this is a bit of a, not a passion project. What's that called? A vanity project. I realize that. But I do enjoy the likes and subscribes and especially the interaction. So give me a band I should check out. Two bands, obviously, to be able to do this. I mean, I'm definitely going to do Pentagram soon. Probably should have done it this one. Ride that wave. Why ever Bobby Leibel got famous all of a sudden. I don't know. Keeps showing up in my Instagram feed for some reason. Cool though. I enjoy it. Abhorrence. Which Abhorrence is better? Mains? I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it. The two Norwegian Mains. In fact, I think they did. Yeah, they released a split years later, kind of as a tongue-in-cheek thing, which I really appreciate, obviously. Part of black metal. For me, at least. Part of the formula. Who else? I'm not going to do Absurd or Bachuska. That don't count. Baphomet. Probably like 5 of them. Cenotaph. Two quality ones there. Sabbath, obviously. I already know which one's going to win there. Both are good, though. Pest. think there's 3 pests that all came out in the late 90s, if I remember right. I don't know. Mortem? Probably do a few, because I think there's 2 bands that spell it with a U instead of the E. I don't know. Well, thank you for staying. Did anybody watch to the end? You know what? I got a weird little trailer and that I'm gonna tack onto the end of this. So I don't know. Have a good night, day, morning, whatever.